Marriage is often hard because you speak different languages. At the beginning of each meeting with a couple, I check in to see how things have been going the previous week. Here's a typical report from one husband. Well, we were sitting in Starbucks having this great conversation, enjoying the morning. Then all of a sudden, she glazed over and refused to talk. I don't get it. I couldn't figure out what happened, and she refused to tell me. Or a wife reports something like this. I was talking about what we were learning in our last session, and he suddenly got angry. He made a sarcastic comment, and then he wouldn't talk anymore. I thought we were making progress. What happened? Well, like the folks at the Tower of Babel, everything just seemed to be going well. Then all of a sudden, they lost their ability to communicate. They didn't realize it, but they were actually speaking different languages, although it still sounded a lot like English to both of them. So why does that kind of miscommunication happen so often between men and women? Well, by now we all know that a man is more sensitive than a woman, and he's vulnerable to different things than she is. So most of the time, a woman has absolutely no clue that she might be saying or doing anything that could be even remotely related to attack, blame, or criticism. That's where we need to understand the power of our language, and the words often hold very different meanings for a man than they do for a woman. For example, I was counseling an engaged couple who had hit a roadblock on their way to the altar. As they struggled to understand one another, the woman looked at her fiancé and said, I hate that I'm causing you so many problems. Maybe you'd be better off without me. Maybe it'd be better if I just walked away. Now, you can understand her statement, right? She sounds like she's willing to sacrifice her happiness for his. But that's not what he heard at all. What he actually heard was, you better get your act together, bud, or I'm out of here. He was deeply wounded by her statement and didn't want to show it, so he stiffened his upper lip and shut her out to protect himself. When I translated how he heard her statement, she looked at both of us in disbelief. Then he confirmed my translation from female expressive language into male receptive language. What she'd said was not what he'd heard. His sensitivity to rejection, to not being good enough, to his failure to please her, had colored the meaning of her words. He was listening through the filter of his emotions, through his vulnerability, and intense fear of being found inadequate. We misinterpret one another's body language, too. Dr. Deborah Tannen is an expert in the field of interpersonal communication. She conducted a study of same-sex pairs of children, elementary school through high school, who were asked to take 2 chairs into a room and wait there for the researcher. I used to show video clips of this study in my class at Azusa Pacific University. It was amazing to watch. The female pairs were consistently engaged in face-to-face conversation as they were waiting for the experimenter. Conversely, the boys placed their chairs in a side-by-side configuration, rarely saying more than a few words to one another and avoiding eye contact. So just how do you think this tendency might play out in conversations between men and women? Well, for a man, the face-to-face approach may make him feel like he's being challenged, especially if his woman is upset. Instinctively, he prepares to defend himself, and as every football fan knows, the best defense is a good offense, which tends to be not so good for her. Tip: one of the best ways to get a man of any age to talk to you is simply to engage in a joint activity that puts you side by side. Then let your conversation flow naturally, and before you know it, you'll be talking about more serious stuff. So find an enjoyable activity, or semi-enjoyable activity like washing dishes, that he would like you to do together that puts you side by side. Don't pressure him to start talking, just listen and see what happens. Please note that for women, the side-by-side approach may feel like a man isn't that interested in her, or that he simply doesn't give a rip about whatever she's saying. If she feels like she's being ignored, she'll hit harder with her words, trying to get him to respond to her, which makes marriage more difficult than it needs to be.